What up, Toshi here. Today we're going to talk about Shorekeeper and the new Camellya drip teas. Which character should you pull for upcoming in Wuthering Waves? Do keep in mind that both of these patches are going to have one brand new limited 5-star, so there is a chance that the next banner character is going to be a previously ran character. For the first one, we can assume is going to be a character from 1.0. So for Shorekeeper's banner patch or whatever, we're going to expect to see 1.3, we should expect to see a rerun of one of the 1.0 characters. And then for the next patch with Camellya, we should expect to see another rerun as well. I'm guessing that either one is going to be Yinlin and the other one will be Jiyan, vice versa. So we'll wait and see what it ends up being, but we'll go over those characters in this video as well. Now, Shorekeeper. We know Shorekeeper is going to be an amazing support. Pretty much on the tier of Arena, sometimes even better than Arena, depending on the type of player you are, depending on the matchups you find yourself in against certain bosses, she'll feel especially better, right? Because of her mechanics that allows her to pretty much keep you from losing out on damage, if you catch my drift here. We made a video on Shorekeeper, so I suggest you go and check that out. We went into depth on the character's kit and took a deep dive on everything you really need to know about the character in general. And her role is the same as Verena, it's no different. She gives you a ton of healing, she gives you a ton of attack, she gives you a ton of damage boosting, and she has very short field time. So her conceptual energy gain is actually pretty dang good. Again, on the same tier of Verena. And considering that her and Verena both want to use the same weapon because they're both rectifier users, variation is a very nice weapon to have on the character if you already have, let's say, 2 copies of the weapon, right? As for Shorekeeper, compared to Verena, the best thing about Shorekeeper is that she's HP scaling, and the reason why is that HP scaling allows you to do 2 things. The very first thing is to completely ignore the fact that you have to invest into other stats to keep your survivability up. So Verena is an attack scaling healer, right? She has to invest into multiple defensive stats to keep her around on the field in case she is to take a hit, because a lot of enemies in the game do one tap you, and I'll be completely honest, right? You can't really expect every single player to dodge every single hit all the time in Wuthering Waves. That's just not realistic. But the thing is about Verena is that because of that, you have to invest into some HP, and therefore you lose out on some attack, and therefore building a Verena on DPS is rather difficult. Now obviously her multipliers aren't the best because she was nerfed leading into the launch of the game. But here comes Shorekeeper. And Shorekeeper has allowed us to circumvent that by being HP scaling completely, and this in turn gives her nice residual damage, very nice sub damage, right? She's able to scale off of one stat, so you don't have to, invest into other stats that you don't need on the character. So HP scaling will then allow you to invest into those crit stats if you want to, or to go all in into more HP and just give her a pretty much copy-paste healer build, which is what I assume most people will do. But if you're like me, and you probably have farmed out some HP, crit damage, energy regen subs on your echoes, is going to be very nice on the character. Extremely nice. And it does help that she does have healing bonus inside of her, not traces, what is it called in this game? Skill tree. Very nice, right? Very nice. That in turn gives you more healing because it's multiplicative on the amount of outgoing healing to the team. Now, as for design, Shorekeeper's design is immaculate. This design is top tier, definitely one of the best designs in any gacha game of this year. It's extremely good, extremely good. Now, I know a lot of people compare this to Black Swan and says it's a copy-paste of Black Swan, right? Blue Swan, White Swan, or whatever you want to call it. I consider this, in my honest opinion, to me personally, to be better than Black Swan's design overall. There is a little bit more elements to design for Shorekeeper, right? Like you have the butterfly. You have the fact that her color scheme is really nice with the outfit she's wearing. I think blue is a much better color scheme to go with white than black is to go with purple, in my honest opinion, right? Now, again, this is just what I see in terms of design and aesthetic. So if you're someone who values the opposite, right, and maybe you like those more darker colors for a character, then hey, knock yourself out, right? Knock yourself out. Don't knock yourself out. Don't do that. That's very bad. Dangerous too. Shorekeeper, yeah, this character looks very, very nice. I'm personally looking to S6's character because the more copies you have of the character, the more damage she does. She also does help with boosting up the damage of the team, and she has lesser field time overall and a little bit more quality life. But a regular S0 copy of this character is extremely good, right? You don't need to go any further than S0 on the character. You don't even need her 5-star weapon. She already gives pretty much the same tier of value as Verena at S0. Same as Verena at S0. You don't need to go any further than it. Verena S2 does feel pretty good with that extra conservative energy gain you do get. It's extremely good, don't get me wrong, especially when you are farming in the overworld. But Shorekeeper is fine at S0 with variation R1, right? Extremely strong character, like definitely game-changing like Verena. The thing is about Verena and Shorekeeper is that even though they're both the same character, essentially, one is going to allow you to have one on one team and one on the other team. So this will be very nice to have in your team on the Tower Adversity, right? And Tower Adversity is one of those contents where being able to have another character in the team that has very short field time, which gives you more time to clear the boss, and also gives you buffs in that time window as well, is going to allow you to maximize your damage further, and you should see quicker runs in the Tower Adversity for both teams. Very, very nice. Again, amazing character. I would say her value over Camellya is definitely there. Camellya is a DPS, and we'll talk about her in just a second, but Shorekeeper definitely does have the best pull value in terms of the upcoming characters we have, even with the rerun characters into consideration as well, because she is a defensive option, and we don't have too many solid defensive option buffing characters in the game, right? Defensive option, offensive buffing support. Now, Camellya also looks amazing. Again, Camellya, much like Shorekeeper, is top 2 designs in the whole year of any gacha game for me personally. Maybe this is just a very objective statement, right? Maybe it is the best designs we have currently in the gacha games, period, right? I know a lot of people really like Jane Doe. I think Ellen Joe looks pretty good too. But again, Camellya and Shorekeeper just look really, really good. There is a lot to their outfits. There is a lot to their aesthetics. Changli also looks pretty good too, right? Jinsei looks pretty good. Jiyan looks pretty solid. Yinlin looks pretty solid too. So overall, the designs for Wuthering Waves has been consistently good. And honestly, they've gotten better ever since 1.0. They've just gotten increasingly better. And I can't wait to see what character designs we're going to have upcoming in the future versions like 2.0, right? Oh my goodness. The design is going to go extremely hard, I bet. But anyways, Camellya Black Shores. She's going to be in the 1.4 patch. Boring OHU. Hee. I'm looking forward to our game. So she kind of reminds me of Sparkle, just from the monologue here. The reason why I say Sparkle is because this is essentially a line Sparkle would have, right? Sparkle just likes to have fun. Camellya seems like a character that just likes to have fun. Although I'm sure Camellya does have certain motives she wants to achieve. So maybe she is a little different from Sparkle. For the most part, Sparkle, aside from, the masked fool, she pretty much just wants to have fun. And that's all I can really say about the comparisons between the two characters. Other than the design looking very similar and their appeal also being very similar, right? If you like one, you probably like the other and vice versa. Me, I'm calling myself out here really hard, right? But anyways, Camellya. She is going to be a damage dealing character. The reason why is because we have a support right before the next patch. Lets me know that we're going to have another DPS right after, right? Now, as for what she can do, what her element is going to be, if we look at just the color scheme on the post here, I'm going to say Havoc right off the bat. The reason why is because we haven't had a 5-star Havoc character. Again, you might say, oh, Havoc Rover, right? But that was given to a player for free, and it wasn't a character you roll for in the banner, right? So limited characters I'm speaking of here. We haven't had a Havoc limited 5-star. So in my opinion, right, this seems to be a Havoc character just right off the bat. You could say Flame, right? Fire. But we just had Changli. And honestly, if she was Fire, I think that'd be even better, right? Fire alongside Changli would allow you to essentially maximize the Changli outro buffs you are giving to Camellya. And then Camellya will come in and be a main DPS and do a bunch of damage. I think that's actually best case scenario. And even if she isn't a, fire character, flame character. Even being a Havoc character is also pretty good because you have Donjin giving buffs when you swap off of her, which those Havoc bonuses going towards Camellya would allow her to maximize her damage. Just really, really solid overall. She'll be one of those elements, but I'm going to lean and say Havoc just because I would assume that they want to replace the Havoc Rover eventually, just like they replaced the Spectral Rover with Jinsei, for instance, so that makes sense. Now, as for Camellya and what she will do, I picture her being a main DPS. I don't see her being a sub DPS. Just because a design like this, I expect to be on field as long as possible. In Wuthering Waves, let's be real, you can play any character main DPS. You can play Zhezhe main DPS. All you need to do is just weave in those basic attacks every time you use your elemental skill. You'll weave in those basic attacks, and then you will get more stacks towards your Forte circuit, and then the character will be allowed to continuously press the E skill, right? And then you'll just always have uptime in her damage, as long as you do basic attacks. Even the basic attacks do quite a bit of damage because she does scale off a basic attack damage bonus, right? Her whole kit. So she's very valuable in that sense as a sub DPS, but also pretty good as a main DPS too if you choose to play her like that. And I expect Camellya to be no different. Now, I expect her role primarily, her main focus, right, to just be a main DPS. But hey, who's not to say you can't play her as a sub off-field character if you just want to do quick swap with other characters. I know that's very popular, like Yinlin quick swap teams. I know a lot of people like to do that. I'm not a fan of quick swap, right? I just don't like playing like that. I like to have the characters on field as long as possible. Sometimes when I'm in the overworld exploring, I'll find myself using Zhezhe on field for a very long time, even though I have her in the same team alongside Cheng-Li, and I can give Cheng-Li some resonance skill damage buffs, but I choose not to do it just because I like to see the animations of Zhezhe sometimes because they look pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Camellya though. In terms of value, how much value would she have over Shorekeeper? If I'm being completely honest, the value she has over Shorekeeper is not pretty high because we already have Havoc Rover, you have Donjin. Most people already have those two characters built. She pretty much is going to be a skip for a lot of players, assuming she's Havoc. But if she is Fire, Flame, right, then she pretty much comes close to a must pull nearly. Especially if you have Cheng-Li. But we'll wait and see what her element ends up being, and I'm sure that leaks will tell very soon what that element actually is in hindsight. Now let's talk about Jiyan. Jiyan is most likely going to be the first rerun we have for a 5-star character in Wuthering Waves. I expect him to be the first character to rerun in patches 1.3 second half. So, Jiyan, is he worth your pull still in Wuthering Waves? I'm being completely honest with you all. With him being the 1.0 character, his pull value is pretty low. Now, the reason why I say that is because 1.0 characters typically have a notorious future for being characters that essentially become very, 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 very outclassed by future releases, right? And considering we will be hitting, if the pipe that's dripping is actually true, 2.0 is going to be right after 1.4, and 2.0 should see a very large increase in terms of damage, right, compared to 1.0. That's not to say that you can't pull him. That's not to say that he's not valuable as of right now. Wuthering, he can still clear the content, the hardest content the game has to offer, Tower Adversity, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. He's a very solid win damage dealer. You can use him in a team with Yang. You can use him in a team with Mortefi, who is his best teammate right now because of the heavy attack damage bonus he does give to Jiyan. After swapping off using his outro skill, Jiyan comes in and does damage. Jiyan also has pretty nice off-field damage, right? Very quick. It's like a very short window of off-field damage with his outro skill. But Jiyan overall is a very solid character. He is still one of probably the best AoE characters still in the game right now. His AoE clears everything so quickly. It's very, very nice. Very nice for exploring the overworld, but extremely good for bossing still. And the reason why is because all of his dragon hits will actually hit the enemy that you are attacking, even if you're not in AoE scenarios. So, let's say you have 10 hits in AoE. Those 10 hits you have in AoE are going to translate to 10 hits you have in single target against that one enemy, which is extremely valuable, mind you, extremely valuable. It's a huge quality of life for an AoE character such as himself, and that has allowed him to stay relevant in content such as the Tower of Mercy, where the bosses have a bazillion, manillion, sextillion HP, right? And are very hard to kill unless you have very solid DPS windows and decent rotations, right? Now, as for Jiyan's value compared to the other characters in the upcoming versions, I would say he has probably like 10% of the value of Shorekeeper, just because if you don't already have the character, Shorekeeper just, again, if you don't already have Jiyan is what I'm saying, then why would I suggest Jiyan when Shorekeeper exists, or a new character like, for instance, Camellya is coming out that exists, right? And then the other character that we haven't talked about yet, spoiler alert, Yinlin, who has more value than Jiyan. Why would I recommend Jiyan when those characters exist, right? Again, not to say you can't use him, he's still pretty solid, but I just wouldn't recommend him to most players unless you desperately want to roll for him. Let's say you join late and you're a husbando collector, you collect the guy characters in Lua, then I could see that as being the selling point as for Jiyan. And if that's you, definitely go for him, because it seems like we're not going to have another male character until probably 2.1 plus is my guess. And I'll be honest, considering we just got one for free, it's not a good look for male characters overall in general going forward into Wuthering Waves for limited characters. That's my opinion though. 4 stars, something different, but limited characters, ooh, we'll wait and see. Last but not least, we have Yinlin, who has shown her value already in Wuthering Waves. She's been the first like real case of like, wow, this character feels close to a must pull as close as possible. She's extremely strong. Now, for many players, this character has essentially allowed them to clear the hardest content the game has to offer on easy mode. For a lot of you, right, all of you actually, we've all gotten Zhang for free. She enables Zhang to deal as much damage as possible because she buffs the resonance liberation damage of the character while also giving him an electro damage bonus. So that in turn allows him to deal a huge amount of damage with his ultimate. Like, again, we're talking like Yinlin for Zhang Liao, essentially a 5-star weapon to Zhang Liao. So you can imagine what it's like to have Zhang Liao with 5-star weapon with Yinlin in the same team. You're going to do a ton of damage, and you're going to clear content so easily, you'll just, like, you can do it with your eyes closed. Now, another thing about Yinlin is that she's just very nice for quick swap teams. She's very nice for Jinsei because she provides off-field stacks for Jinsei, right? The off-field stacks allows Jinsei to get her, you have to use the outro skill for Jinsei first, right? But once you use the outro skill, you'll get stacks on Jinsei, and then you're able to then swap back into Jinsei, and then you'll have her Forte Circuit ready to go most of the time, because Yinlin has a lot of off-field hits, a lot of on-field hits that is going to stack Jinsei extremely quick. Again, we're talking probably the best stacker for Jinsei, and just the best character for damage overall as a sub DPS. She's just extremely valuable. Now, would I consider her to be valuable or more valuable than Shorekeeper? Obviously not, because we're comparing a sub DPS to a support, and a support usually has more value than a sub DPS, but I would say that Yinlin has more value than Camellya, and I'll go as far as to say, if you already have Verena and you don't really care about defensive options, then Yinlin is going to be the best pull for you out of all the characters here, assuming you don't have the character, or heck, even assuming, let's say, you don't have String Master, which is our 5-star signature weapon, that also has a ton of value as well, and it honestly can have even more value if you are Encore main and you enjoy using Encore, which I assume is what a lot of you are going to do. I can predict that a lot of you are just going to skip everything and just go for Yinlin's signature weapon. Dang. I mean, hey, you're guaranteed to get the weapon, right? There is no 50-50, so I honestly think that is amazing value. I will say one thing, though. The reason why I personally don't like rolling for weapons in general, because I always see weapons as a means of, giving it, especially weapons for characters that have pretty much ran before in the game. I consider it one of those things where it's like, eventually this character is going to get replaced. And what if the future character doesn't use, like, let's say any future character doesn't use any of the weapons you already have on your account? Well, then you have a character that isn't as good as they used to be, isn't as relevant as they used to be, and you have characters in the future that are better. And then you essentially have characters you have benched with weapons you have benched. Now, I'm not saying don't go for 5-star weapons, right? But if you're going to go for 5-star weapon, make sure you do it for a character that is extremely strong and is extremely oppressive in Wuthering Waves. Like, for instance, Jinsei. Jinsei is the only character I recommend to pull a weapon for in Wuthering Waves in general. I wouldn't pull for any other weapon for any other character. That's just my opinion. Even though String Master is extremely good for Encore and, best in slot for Yinlin. If you can already clear the content, right, in Wuthering Waves, it can go two ways, right? Pull for it, but don't pull for it. Does that make sense? That's pretty much it, though. That's all I want to say. Wuthering Waves, should you pull? 4 characters. I'm personally going for Shorekeeper and Camellya. Yinlin, I probably will go for, but if I don't have enough pulls, I'm not trying to spend money, I probably will skip, and it won't bother me, because I don't even use Zhengli. I'll be completely honest. I don't care about the character. Thank you for watching. Have a nice rest of your day. Good luck with your pulls. Bye-bye. I didn't mention this before, but instant S6. Like, instant. As soon as her banner drops.